understanding the importance of effective vetting in corporate security. We're really, really pleased to be joined by Alan Saquella, Assistant Professor, College of Business Security and Intelligence at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me on.
No, great pleasure. And I know this is a topic you're very passionate about, and of course you do have a background in very related fields. Why is this still a topic? We're looking for the modernized corporate security workforce, and yet vetting and due diligence is still there as a topic. But why?
Well, we can call out what's happening in legislation. So as we look at on a federal level here in the United States, the federal just passed a law last year, which basically banned using the question on application, have you been convicted of a crime? And of course, where they're going with this is they want candidates to be considered those who've had convictions. And of course, several states are following the same process. So they call it banning the box, which basically remove the box that asks about criminal convictions. But in doing so, there's some other things that have followed. Some other states are also now requiring or employers to only go back so many years to look. In other words, there's some states that say you can only go back 5 years, 7 years, and in some cases 10 years in a person's criminal history to consider them or eliminate them, let's say. Some states have also have a presumption that if a person has been convicted over 5 years ago, they're employable at this point. Some states have specified what types of crimes should not be considered in a person's background. So you have all these different states legislating laws. You almost need to be a lawyer in every state just to figure out what the requirements are as you're screening and looking. So basically, criminal background checks have become very difficult to use and also help select, qualified candidates. So that's just the beginning. There's a lot of other things that, I'll certainly talk about that have also put additional restrictions on employers to be able to select good candidates for whether it be corporate security or EP.
But just to for balance, and for our audience, we're not suggesting necessarily one way or the other that somebody in 1975 who stole a packet of potato chips and has a criminal record can't be a good man guard. We're not really going that far. We're not passing judgment. We're literally looking at how to do good vetting. Is that where we're going with it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, everyone's had some history of some sort or another. We don't want to eliminate folks, to your point, that had some minor violations decades ago. But what we're looking for is some consistency. What are the recruiters like? What do the corporate security people like? What do we find it's effective in the industry? Because right now there's not a real standard, and it's kind of disjointed, due in part to the different states as well as different organizations. But I, certainly have some things I would share on what the recruiters like as their number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through 10, as far as what they like to look for in vetting, as well as what the corporate security arena likes in vetting. And they don't always necessarily align.
Okay, so I know previously you said you might have some statistics or sort of facts and figures. Do you want to start with sort of that angle before we get into more of a debate as to how we're going to do the vetting, or would you like to go more into the vetting?
Oh, I'd give you a little bit. Certainly, we know that vetting has to occur, because if there's no vetting, of course, there's a high propensity that you're going to employ somebody that's going to cause disruption to your organization or business, right? So there has to be vetting. I look at a lot of different organizations. The Association of Certified Fraud Examiners is one that basically states that 5% of companies' revenue is lost due to employee theft or fraud, embezzlement. That's pretty significant when you're looking at an annual revenue of $20 billion, multiply that times 10%. That's a staggering number. What's also interesting is 50% of larger businesses have experienced some of this stuff. A third of small businesses, according to the American Small Business Association, basically go bankrupt because of these types of things. That's just embezzlement. We're not talking about some of the other issues and disruption that comes to work without vetting, such as poor performance, misconduct, chronic illness or lateness, violating policies, drug or alcohol abuse, personal use of company equipment, theft, falsifying documents, and the list goes on. So all companies experience these things. And what we're trying to do, though, is bring these numbers down and not employ the bad ones, but at the same time, bring the talent in, because you do want talent in order to be able to run your corporate security or your executive protection rosters with the organization that you work for. So there's been some, a lot of change over the years with the different types of methodology for screening. Now, of course, we know now that the background checks for criminal history is being regulated federally and state by state. But even previous to that was the Polygraph Protection Act of 1988, which pretty much eliminated the use of pre-employment polygraph for the corporate sector or private sector, with the exception of drug manufacturers, security organizations, and also related industries. But for the most part, that was one method that was eliminated. Of course, it's very costly anyway. And if you're trying to build a team, like we're going to be talking about later, how do you build a team and have it ready to go for those short notice jobs and so forth? And of course, we're starting to see some of the other issues statistically with getting information from past employers, right? So when you leave your organization, you apply somewhere else. When your new company is doing a background check, they may check references, right? They may check your educational background. They're going to certainly do the background from a criminal standpoint. But what are employers giving out? Well, we know the vast majority of employers are not giving out any information other than the dates of employment, what your last salary was, and possibly what your title was. They're not going to share with the new employer. And they're not going to share whether you're eligible for rehire or not. Interestingly enough, before I left the corporate world last year and went into education, we used to have job reference signed affidavits come in from all different agencies, looking for information for a candidate that used to work for us. It's a long document signed by the candidate. And that would allow us as the employer to give information out. We didn't do it. We only filled out 2 or 3 questions on that list, signed it, sent it back. Dates of employment, what they made, and last position. So employers are afraid of giving out information that could come back and haunt them, get them into litigation. So there's a lot of.
Why I know this isn't the main topic, but I am surprised as an outsider that they're allowed to give away remuneration information. That sounds a little bit like it's against something. Is it freely available?
Are you talking about employment information, past employment information?
Yeah, I mean, if your previous employer gives out details of your salary, that's for me, that seems a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, well, that might be. Some employers have certain rules and what they are allowed to provide to background investigators. Generally speaking, it's dates of employment in your last position. Occasionally, they'll give out the salary information. New employers want to know the salary information so they can determine whether or not you're going to be satisfied in the new position, right? So if you made $100,000 in your past job and you're applying for a job that pays $50,000, they're going to deem you as being overqualified and they may not hire you. Again, but for the most part, they're not giving anything else out, like performance, how you did, any issues that you had while you were there, and whether you're eligible for rehire or not. So in the old days, they used to give out a lot of that information, but it came back to haunt them in litigation and other issues. So again, they're giving out very little information, and to the point where it's not very useful.
So what would you say? I mean, is there a distinct difference between the glossy, shiny corporate world and the hard cut and thrust, cutthroat EP world? Because I can imagine, someone says, right, this job is coming up. I need a team in 3 hours, and then boom, they might argue, I don't have the time to do background checks. What would you say to that?
Yeah, certainly in EP world, I mean, you have to be ready at a moment's notice. So the way you go about preparing your teams for that is you have to have, like a piggy bank, or a qualified team ready to go and fully vetted. From the corporate side, you don't ever want to take shortcuts, and you really don't want to on the EP side either. You want to do the vetting up front, keep that piggy bank ready to go with talent that can be called up in a moment's notice. So there is a difference in preparation, but you really don't ever want to take a shortcut in applicant screening. You don't want to skip anything. You just have to have folks ready to go. Now, on the corporate side, you're going to do your vetting along the way whenever there's a job opening, right? On the EP side, you're going to have that done as well in advance. Put them through all those different screens and have that bank ready to go, so that when you get that call, you can have them ready in 3 hours. So although the timing for both is different, the vetting should be the same, in my opinion. It's just a matter of when you have them ready. And again, the vetting should be done again in all cases, in my opinion.
And you mentioned, as for a while now, polygraphs are not flavor of the month in many situations, and I know you are trained in that discipline. What can the modernized corporate security function do in that case, because they're not allowed to use it?
Well, in a security arena, they can use it. So the Polygraph Protection Act of 1988 basically said that it's banned the use of pre-employment polygraphs for all industries, with the exception of security, pharmaceuticals, and some related businesses. So you can do pre-employment polygraphs for the security world. A lot of employers have taken, at least on the corporate side, they've just taken the view that, we're not going to do them at all. And so, most of the organizations I've worked with said, we're just not going to use them. And so, if you're in the EP world, it's probably a good thing to do, because you can have it done and have the person vetted along with the other screening tools that you are going to have in place. And so that at least in a moment in time, you have that person ready to go. So I think polygraph still is useful in the security world, and those high risk locations where the law allows us to use it. Again, companies have shied away from it. They just don't want to deal with some of the issues that could come from it. Plus, it's costly and it takes some time. So a pre-employment polygraph could take a half a day to run, and it's not going to be very cheap for you to run either. Again, it's based on the organization. Is that what they want to do? Now, there are other tools, of course, that are useful in the pre-employment vetting process.
And what then could those tools be? Because on the one hand, you want to verify that what the candidate has said is true, but they may have never done anything bad, or they've never been caught. So in that context, what tools are out there?
Yeah, so it's interesting because the recruiters, a lot of the talent acquisition folks, they've actually listed some of the things that they feel are the most effective pre-employment screening tools. Number one on their list is testing. They believe the person should go through some sort of screening test, if you will, both from a skill standpoint and also from a kind of a personality thing, depending on the role. I would agree with them on that. I think testing is important. A lot of companies have shied away from testing, one, because of cost, and they may be somewhat discriminatory to different groups. However, those, again, according to recruiters and even security professionals, they find those as being helpful. So from a performance standpoint, let's say skill set, yeah, you might need that if you're going to be doing a certain type of job or skill that requires to be able to handle, let's say, a firearm. Whereas if it's not going to be a physical security EP type position, you may want to have chest tests for other skills. But in addition to that, some of these tests also provide an insight into their behaviors, because you mentioned not everybody has a history. And of course, a lot of people in our field don't have a history, but they may have behaviors that you don't want on the job. So some of those different types of tests can be personality related, or as also behavior based, that they're screening for those types of behaviors they want on the job while eliminating those that they don't want on the job. So that's number one. The other thing that the recruiters talk about they like is they like, I know there's a lot of argument about the resume sifting called the applicant tracking systems. That's number two on their list. They like all the resumes to go through an applicant tracking or resume sifter. And they're looking for those key matches between the job description and the resume, because it's going to expedite their process as they look through the candidate. So that's number two. So I agree with that. I think it helps, especially in a job where you're going to get 100 plus resumes. You don't have time. The recruiter doesn't have time to go through all those. So the best way I can recommend for any professional is make sure that you go to the sites that will help you match your job description with your resume. Look for the keywords. So I'll give you an example, Pelham. You look at a job description that uses the word security, but some companies use the word loss prevention, asset protection, asset preservation. And if those words, you and I know those words are pretty much the same thing in the industry, but some corporations use others. So if you use the word security throughout your resume and they're looking for someone with loss prevention background, you're probably not going to meet the criteria, and you may be rejected by that applicant tracking system. So you have to get past that. And again, there's some sites out there like The Professional Me, which is a free app, or you can go online and actually upload your resume and your job description, so you can do the comparison and then update your resume to match better with the terminology that they're using in that organization to help you get past the ATS, because you really want to get in front of a real person, right? Then they talk about phone screens. The phone screen, of course, is that pre-interview, if you will, to see if you meet the minimum qualification. So the recruiter, and I agree with this too, because it's going to help us as security professionals. We don't want to have folks coming in front of us to interview if they don't have the right qualifications. So good corporate folks, and I would say EP leaders as well, provide the requirements to the recruiter. So as they're looking, they can hit those hot spots during the phone screen to eliminate those who necessarily don't have that. What's interesting, number 4 on our list is social media. So that's getting bigger and bigger. Social media checks, people do put things on their Facebook and Instagram they probably shouldn't. And of course, that's going to give insight into the person's behavior. And of course, they're using that. The next one on the list is video interviews. Now, we know there's video interviews that use artificial intelligence algorithms to look at different things like response time. And unfortunately, they're good, but at the same time, they have some flaws, because you're going to eliminate those who might have disabilities or some issues that the system's going to reject. But they like those as well. And one of the other things they like is trial projects. So if it's a very important role that you're applying for, they'll give you a project and say, go ahead and run with this, and give us a report back on it. They want to see how you do it, kind of like a tabletop type exercise or project. So those are some of the things that the recruiters are recommending for pre-employment screening, in addition to the standard criminal background check. And of course, if it's someone dealing with finances, there's going to be a credit check as well. The last thing, of course, from a corporate security perspective, I would recommend, and that would be the behavior assessments related to screening for disruptive business behaviors you don't want in a workplace violence, sexual harassment, embezzlement, fraud, any of those types of behaviors. Someone who has a propensity for those, you don't want those types of folks on your payroll as well.
And so this is a work in progress, I suppose, as technology gets more advanced and methodologies get more ingrained. But you can imagine a security professional out there, maybe a security consultant. They want to add more strings to their bow, so they go off and they do some online training, or they go to some courses, and you've probably seen those things out there, where it says, if they're looking upwards, they are imagining things. If they're looking downwards, they're feeling things, and left and right, and this, and yeah, they want to upskill. Maybe just a question, because you're here, and I want to get this advice. Is there anything that they can do to get these lie detector skills, to get these, I don't know, these skills that look so easy in these books, the self-help books, but is there anything they can do?
It is a skill, and like any skill, you have to practice it. Otherwise, it's like muscle memory, right? You have to repeat it and repeat it. And so, yes, I'm a former polygraph examiner, and I train and I provide interview interrogation classes at the university. And we talk about what you just mentioned. If you look up and to the left, you're remembering. If you look up and to the right, you're recalling. You're looking for different body language responses based on your question, which is the stimulus. Then you look for hesitation, pause, et cetera. There's a lot of things you can look for. But again, unless you practice it on a regular, reoccurring basis, you're not going to remember it. So it's difficult. We're human beings, right? So that's why we're looking for technology to not replace, but to add, add value. It's kind of like, think about, like, from an accounting standpoint, you remember 25 years ago, this thing called QuickBooks came along. QuickBooks helped small businesses manage their accounts and so forth. Some accountants got a little nervous that they would be replaced. No, it actually created more work for them. And that's the same thing what we're talking about here with these different types of assessments, the behavioral assessments and/or personality profiles, and some of these other things that are coming along from a technological standpoint. They're going to help enhance our ability to better select. We certainly can train people on these skills, but again, if they're not hiring on a regular, recurring basis, if they're not practicing, looking for deceptive responses, they're not going to remember it or get it. So yes, it can be trained, again, but it has to be used and remembered. Otherwise, you lose it.
Mm. No, that's a good point. Kelly in the audience, hi Kelly, says, what about contracts to hire? Is there specific guidelines for the company you're utilizing?
Yeah, I mean, certainly that should be part of any agreement. Whenever you have any type of contract or agreement, you should have the language that's appropriate for what you're looking for. If you're using a company to do some screening for you, of course, there's going to be legal language in there as well to protect you and also them. One of the things I always recommend, whether it be on EP side and or the corporate security side, is you should have a bank of candidates ready to go. And you're going to use these tools. When I was in the corporate world, I basically targeted 3 different level positions: entry level, mid-level, and executive level security folks. The executive and mid-level positions, you're going to get your bank or your bench, if you will, based on referrals, networking, and basically staying in contact. And of course, LinkedIn is a good way to do that, or through the different associations. And you should have kind of a talent pool off to the right. Those should be vetted. You're going to vet those through your colleagues, and you're not going to put them through an actual true background check until you have a vacancy. And then, of course, at the entry level, if you have entry level positions, you should build those relationships with those universities. You should be offering regular internships. You should offer micro internships, which should be project specific. And you should also be mentoring these young professionals, because we owe it to our career. As I was listening to the last panel discussion, you have to be ready. The way to do that is give back. You also want to bring in that next generation of security professionals, EP professionals. And the way I do it is I had relationships with the universities, constantly mentoring. And I actually required my managers to mentor one professional or one entry-level person every year, so that they're giving back and we're helping. It's not just for our corporation, it's for the industry. We owe it to our industry, especially as we look at where we are right now in this world with all the different opportunities that face security, national security, as well as corporate security. So give back, look for those opportunities, mentor, and continually, the recruiters and the professional talent acquisition folks, we rely heavily on them, but they need us to help them even source some of these candidates. Anything we can do to bring them some qualified candidates as referrals is going to help everybody. So my thought is, let's pay it forward. Let's look for those folks. And one thing I would caution is we want to stay away from the old cronies and those that are just very similar to us. What I found was, in the corporate side, you need to surround yourself with folks that are going to fill those gaps that you lack. You're going to soar with your strengths. Let's say you're a great person that leads people, but you don't have the technical skills. Well, then you need to make sure that you're looking for those that fill those skills, whether it be on the cyber side or a certified fraud examiner that you might need on your team, or maybe somebody on the EP side. Because in the corporate world, you're going to be doing all that work. You're going to be doing embezzlement investigations. You're going to be providing executive protection. So look for the professionals and build your team with those skills that you don't have. Because as a leader, you're not going to have them all, but you need to be able to assemble a great team.
Great sentiments and nice comments in the audience. Kelly says, great insight and information. We had Martin says, lots of great information today. Jay seems to have his eyes open. I think that's what Jay's getting across. Victor says, great statement, always hire better than you or supplement your department. I think that's really nice. But we are out of time. But this is a fantastic look, and I think vetting, it is key to the future of corporate security modernization. And so I'm really pleased to have had you on. And of course, we had you on the Circuit Magazine podcast. I know you've been on lots of other podcasts. Probably some of those hosts are in this audience too. So it's nice to cross-pollinate, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, Phelim. I appreciate the time, and I'm sure you're going to ask me, but you can find me on LinkedIn. There's only one Alan Saquella out there, so pretty easy to locate.
No, thank you very much, and please do also join us on the Discord channel and add any links that you would like. I'll put the links in our Zoom chat to get there as well.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Let's give Alan a big virtual round of applause, and I look forward to seeing you in the audience.
Absolutely. Thank you, guy.